Mark may be showing up, and that would be a good thing. So, um, okay, now I just need to get the URL to the stream. And Mel, this theoretically should be the URL to the stream. Let me know if that link works. Um, I'm gonna make sure I'm not having any drop frames. I'm coming through clearly. If everyone in and if everyone in the VC could react to this message with either a check mark or an X to indicate that you can hear me, that'd be great. Oh, you are such a trooper. Thank you so much, Nod. I sincerely appreciate that. I know how, just like at a glimpse, how hard it is to balance like hobbies and parenting. So I really appreciate it. All right, I understand, Mel. I understand. So let me check the volume. Okay, everything is going fine. That's wonderful. All right. Okay, Fairy Dust is on the YouTube channel. Well, thank you kindly for showing up. I'm gonna give people about 5 to 10 more minutes to congregate, and this is a good time to. Oh yeah, there is a channel for that, but we've already had people move several times right now. I'm just glad that everything's working the way it is. Next time, I'll introduce people to the channel that's present in the chat, or if y'all think that you can guide people over to that channel, then by all means. But do understand that we have some people in the crowd that may not be as technologically savvy as other people. Should we leave here to go to the YouTube live only? If you want to get me some viewership on YouTube and you don't want to look at the shared screen, then that would be super awesome as well, because I'm gonna show live in here, but I would actually really like to see people on my channel giving me some good viewership. Mark says that he's not hearing anything. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm gonna give Mark the link. And note that there may be a delay from the link the to me actual by the time, like, there may be a delay between you saying something in chat and me actually being able to respond to it because of latency and the sort. So Astro Cat says I can see you and hear you here. That's super awesome. I'm really happy to hear it. Yes, concurrent viewers is a really good way to have the algorithm pick me up and let me know that what I'm doing is legitimate. Um, so yeah, in about 3 minutes, once everyone is properly situated, so yeah, once everyone's properly situated and we get about, oh, I lost a person. Yeah, again, if you all, I see about 10, 12 people in the chat. I will have the live stream up here, but if you want to hear, if you want to do me a favor and support me on YouTube, I put the link in the reading rooms chat. If a mod wants to pin that really quickly, that'd be nice too. I'm also gonna put the link to the live in the no mic chat. That way it's visible to everybody. Everyone has a way to get to my stream. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. We're gonna get started. Calm, calm your ass down, Schmel. You goofbag. I know that's some Sagittarius and you just had to show out one time. That's hilarious. Um, let me see. Okay, Ananta's in here. And I had to swear once just to reinforce in the algorithm that this not for kids because YouTube is on some nonsense right now where if they think stuff is for kids, they restrict it and demonetize it and just do a whole bunch of counterproductive mess. So that's gonna be my one swear hopefully for the remainder of this presentation. But in about 8 seconds, we're gonna get started. Yeah, so and let's go. Saturn retrograde and the implications thereof. Divinati is the name of my brand. That is the name that you'll see me doing business under. I'm Zay, but I represent the Divinati. So without further ado, what is retrograde motion? Retrograde motion is when a planet moves in the relative opposite direction to another. So this term is used when talking about Earth in relativity to another planet, because in astrology, we typically use a geocentric model. That means that the Earth is the center of the model that we use for astrology because Earth is the center of the experience that we face. It is literally where we experience the energy. So it stands to reason that it is the center. And if you look at this GIF over here and you see the blue E and the red M, where the E is Earth and M is Mars, you can see the relative effect that happens. What ends up happening is as the Earth approaches the same point as another planet, or when Earth approaches a certain point compared to another planet, the overall angular distance between the two planets and the absolute distance between the two planets starts to close. That gap starts to close. And then as Earth carries on in its rotational orbit, because the Earth has a faster. Oh, are you unable to see it? The you share screen. I see that people are having difficulty seeing, so I'm gonna try and restart the stream, and we're gonna put it on better text readability. And you can see the stream either on face on YouTube or my live stream. And my you on is everyone able to see the GIF on my slideshow? I see that it's working. I see that it's working on my live stream to YouTube, which by the way still only has 2 concurrent viewers right now. If we can get any more people to watch from the YouTube perspective, that would do me really nice. I understand Louisiana internet not running too hot. It's the only thing that ain't hot down there. Am I right? Ooh, temperatures right now. Um, but yeah, though, for those of you that can see the graphic, you'll notice that there is a point at which Earth passes the other planet, and because Earth is moving so much faster in terms of its angular velocity, that the planet is appearing to go retrograde in respect to the Earth. And let's explore that a little bit further. Do note that luminaries do not go retrograde. Sun and moon are the only planets, notwithstanding Earth, since it's the center of the model, that do not go retrograde. That'll be important later. So, a little bit about the background of it. The word retrograde comes from the Latin retrogradus. Retrogradus. I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Retrogradus. Yeah, there we go. Retrogradus, which when literally translated, retro means back and gradus means step. So backstepping. It is worth noting that the further away a retrograding body is from the Earth, the more frequently that body retrogrades. This is a byproduct of how fast the Earth is in terms of its angular velocity compared to these other planets. So Earth is just constantly lapping these other planets, so to speak. So, how does retrogression actually affect a planet? So, from an astronomical perspective, it simply just means that it goes backwards through the degrees of the constellation that it's in, even if that means going into a previous constellation. Retrograde planets can be very influential in progress charts because as a chart progresses, its angular motion may change, and that can be of aid to someone who is afflicted by a retrograde planet in their chart. And the same way that a retrograde happens, but it doesn't last forever, and the same way on an astronomical level that this presents a step back or a delay or a struggle in a person's in it represents that it represents a delay or a struggle in a person's life that can be related to that motion. So, a little bit more technical stuff. The synodic period is the amount of time from the dead center of one retrograde to another. And the reason why that synodic period is important is because whenever a retrograde occurs, there will always be a point that is equally distant from where the planet is going to be at the end of its retrograde process when it starts turning direct, and where that planet was at when it first began to be retrograde. And that's the dead center of the retrograde process. And that synodic period is related to. Okay, Mel says they can't see the stream. Mel, are you unable to see the stream in Discord or unable to see it on YouTube? So I'm gonna keep going while I wait for his answer. So, but yes, the synodic period is modified by a planet's angular velocity and its distance to Earth. Okay, Mary says that she can see it in both places. That's good. That lets me know that that's probably just an internet issue or something to that effect. And so let's say in theory that a planet like Saturn was actually, let me see, is that talk? No, that's not talked about just yet. Let me see where that is in, because I wrote that down. Actually, I wrote down where about Saturn's retrograde somewhere in here. It may have not made it into the final cut. Oh no, there it is. Yes, there it is. So let's take Saturn for example. Saturn is a day planet. It is diurnal. It prefers to be up in the sky with the sun, which is interesting because the sun and Saturn are not exactly good friends. Uh, just a moment. I saw an unusual message. I had to take a look at that. But yeah, the thing about Saturn is that it goes retrograde fairly often in the sense that it is retrograde fairly often. It is literally retrograde for about 40% of the year, sometime between 4 to 5 months. And as a result of that wide period where Saturn is retrograde, where it literally only has 7 to 8 months of the year where it's direct, that means that a lot of people are actually faced with having a retrograding Saturn. Now, let's talk about Saturn in astrology. Saturn represents many different things: duties and burdens, restrictions and struggles. I personally refer to Saturn as the cosmic tax collector because, okay, Farida said, so my retrograde, my return is going to last forever. Not necessarily. If you are currently experiencing your Saturn return, then you may possibly experience a period where Saturn crosses over that degree and then it retrogrades back before that degree of your natal Saturn, and then it'll progress forward. But it will pass across these points. And oh dear, this is something I don't recall at the top of my head, but I try to espouse good, honest astrology, right? One of the things about a retrograding planet is that once it ends its retrograde motion, it tends to be a little bit swifter in its direct motion. Uh, no worries, Mark. I will send you the link to the live stream. And hold on a second. And you here on YouTube. It's one of them things that happens. But yeah, though, even though and I do kind of feel sorry for those people that have to experience that, because when Saturn goes retrograde, it spans about 8 degrees, because Saturn's angular velocity is about 2 minutes a day, mind you. And if it's going retrograde for 120 to 150 days, then that means that it's going to about 240 to 300 minutes, which roughly translates to about 4 to 5. In the case of this current Saturn retrograde, it's going to retrogress 8 degrees from 25 Saturn to 17 Saturn. That is a thick swath of retrogradation that's going on as far as Saturn goes. But yeah, back to the points about Saturn. Saturn is the most distant planet of the traditional seven, and it is the most distant planet that is actually visible to the naked eye. Uranus can sometimes be seen visibly to the naked eye, but it's so rare and it's so far away that very often it's confused for a fixed star if you don't have a telescope to actually see what's going on. I've talked about these things about Saturn, and this is the part that I want to emphasize here. Everyone pays. The thing about Saturn is that, and my Vedic friends will tell you this too. Saturn is the Lord of Karma. Saturn is he who comes to collect what the universe feels like it is owed. If you don't get anything else in your mind about what Saturn is, remember that it is the way that the universe comes to collect its dues from each and every person. And I could go into the complex existential natures of like why some people have so much money and they seem to have everything but not have any consequences. But that's something that goes above and beyond this one lifetime. And to expound upon that any further at this time would take us down a completely different rabbit hole that I would like to broach in a different presentation, because I want to stay fairly on topic here. So, with people who have Saturn retrograde natal, not only is Earth converging towards Saturn, Saturn is converging towards them. So it's like if you have something, that a powerful force that's coming towards you, and or rather, if you are converging towards a powerful force, yet that powerful force is moving away from you slightly, versus that force moving towards you as you move towards it. From a literal distance perspective, when Saturn is retrograding, when that retrograde motion begins, that is when there is a dual convergence, and that intensifies the energy. And some people, and I try to be mindful of weasel words, but just bear with me here. Some people would say that that creates an intensified experience. I say, as a personal Saturn and fifth neighbor, it creates the experience of paying up front, but receiving later. See, regardless of the condition of your Saturn, it is going to give you duties and responsibilities, whether it is stationary, whether it's direct, whether it is retrograde, it does not matter. Saturn is going to give you some hardships. But when you have Saturn retrograde, it is likely that you experience a greater deal of hardships at first. That if you can handle the increased trial that this retrograde planet presents, you can reap greater benefits later on. If from absolutely nothing else, than from the experience that you gleaned from navigating such treacherous and arduous circumstances. I'm going to give that everyone a moment to just digest what I said just now. And now we're going to talk about Saturn in its full rulership, which there's a difference between rulership and exaltation, but that will be addressed in another presentation. Saturn is in rulership in the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. Saturn is the planet that has to wait the longest before it is anywhere on the astrological starboard where it's actually comfortable. It has to go through Aries and Cancer and Leo, and it doesn't like being in those places. It's tremendously uncomfortable there. But Saturn knows, and this is something that my mom always told me, and I never thought that I would be saying this to other people, but it's something very wise that she said. She said you have to go through to get to. And okay, Nicola asks, pay up front, receive later. Can it be also something like doing work up front and then getting benefits later, or is it just duties and Yes, it can be. You do a lot. You experience a lot of hardship, a lot of trials up front, and if you can handle those with grace and poise, there is a great reward later. Um, Back to the subject of Capricorn and Aquarius, though, and Saturn. So, Saturn is the slowest moving of the traditional seven planets, so its journey is very long and arduous, and it has to literally go through three other signs where it is tremendously uncomfortable before it can experience being in a place where it is comfortable. And Saturn, the same way that Saturn has that experience, that's the sort of experience that Saturn ends up giving us. That it tells us no dessert until you eat your vegetables. And I used to have a very adversarial relationship with Saturn because I felt like I was being unjustly restricted. And don't get me wrong, I've been through some things that, quite frankly, I believe that no other person is um that no other person should have to experience. But at the same time, though, me falling apart and giving up as a byproduct of um these negative experiences would not be of any benefit whatsoever. It would not cause me to learn from my karma. It would not allow me to grow and develop as a human. So I have had to adopt, I've had to learn some Capricorn and Aquarian energy and look at my experiences from a more detached and logical perspective and understand how those experiences have shaped me and what I can take away from those experiences that I can help other people with. So, to that effect, Capricorn and Aquarius are about those things. They're about structure and duty. They're about obligation and decentralization, humanitarianism and discipline, pain and drudgery, understanding that if you want nice things in this lifetime, that there is a price to be paid. We didn't get to where we are in society by sitting around and letting everyone else or other things do the work for us. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, mind you. I say that a little tongue in cheek. Take what I said with a grain of salt. But at any rate, someone had to pay the price in order for us to have what we have. And that is the lesson that Saturn tries to impart. So let's take a look at Saturn's rulers and cross compare them. Capricorn is cardinal. The cardinal modality It's all about initiating or constructing or converging something to a finite point. It's a one way arrow, so to speak. And Earth is all about foundation, substantive matters, practical matters, things that can be reached out, seen, and touched and interacted with in the physical world. Earth is also a negative or feminine element. And when I say negative, you have to understand that I'm saying that from I have no idea how water makes me burp, but guess what it does? Anyway, I'm saying that from an astrological perspective. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad energy. It means that it is an absorbing energy. It compels things toward it versus seeking it out instead. And in that same way, Capricorn is cardinal earth. It compels, it shapes, it forms things via its magnetism into a concrete, solid, tangible structure. And Aquarius on the other side is more electric. Aquarius is this for Saturn in this sign, right? The significations that I am making are both for Capricorn and Aquarius and for the general archetype of Saturn itself. How your Saturn will manifest in your chart, Nicola, will vary based off of what Saturn you have. And I'll talk more about that later on in this presentation when we actually get to see some celebrity charts, because you're going to see some really neat things going on in just a moment. So back on the subject of Aquarius. No, that's fine. I like participation from my audience. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, know that there are people in Discord who are sometimes asking me questions, and I prefer to have a more dynamic interaction because I like engagement. That's how I know that people are learning. So sometimes I may stop what I'm saying and interact with some people in the audience. People in the audience on YouTube, you're welcome to interact as well. Okay, so back to the point of Aquarius. Aquarius is the opposite of Leo. Leo is the sun in tarot, whereas Aquarius is the star. And so, as a result of that particular, uh, do I take celebrity requests like to read particular celebrity charts? Sure, at the end. Okay. But yeah, since Aquarius is opposite Leo, Leo is about the self ego. Leo is a warm, optimistic energy that brings joy and light in the place where it is. Aquarius is a more detached and realistic energy that's cold and distant. And whereas Leo is more about the self, which is very, very important, by the way. Like, don't let toxic selflessness make you think that having an individual sense of personality or protecting your individual needs is a bad thing. Don't let people make you think that the luminary nature of Leo. Give me just one minute. Okay, yeah. Don't let people make you think that having needs and focusing on yourself to an extent is bad. It's just a matter of balance. And Aquarius is the other side of that balance. Aquarius is what tells us, hey, there is more to this situation than just myself. I play a role in this situation. I'm not playing the role. I'm playing a role. And that's that's the two sides of Saturn, the part that brings everything together and the part that goes out and lets people know and understand why it's important to work together and why it's important to matriculate yourself into something that is greater than the sum of its parts, because in all honesty that's what society is built on. The fact that we do things for each other that others can't do, that we take care of our sick and shut in, our downtrodden, our weak and vulnerable. We don't prey upon them. We understand that there are other people needs other than our own, and understanding the beautiful richness that that gives us as human beings the capacity to transcend life as a simple animal. And this is one of many components of it. But moving on though, so what does a Saturn retrograde transit mean for you? This is a time to test these foundations that Saturn has been encouraging you to build. Saturn is like the teacher that pulls no punches. They're like in high dignity. Well, I'll just say this, in like low dignity, they're more like Miss Trunchbull. But in high dignity, they would be that college professor that's a real hard ass about turning in your papers on time. There's no, if you do things too late, there's going to be a penalty. Please hold all please hold all chatter until the end of the presentation. Thank you. Yeah, but Saturn is that tough teacher that just doesn't let anything slide by them. Like you're hard pressed to get an A+ out of their class. You have to work really hard for them and show them that you're putting forth the effort. Now, Saturn retrograde is a time to test those foundations. Have you been fulfilling the karmic duties that Saturn has been um, requiring of you? And if Saturn deems that you have failed to sufficiently develop a solid foundation based off of the current lesson that Saturn is teaching you, then Saturn is going to punish you even harder. And so for people with direct Saturn retrogrades tend to be a time of increased arduousness. But for people who are already familiar with the Saturn retrograde energy, which I call that phenomenon phase resonance. I'm going to type that in there, phase resonance. RX versus RX, RX versus direct. I call that phase resonance, meaning that because people have naturally natally retrograde Saturns, because they were a time for increased what? A time for increased karmic doling, basically, Mary, that it's going to be a time when people have increased karmic experiences. Because not only, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, not only do you have the Earth converging towards Saturn, but you also have Saturn converging towards the Earth. In in most cases, bear that in mind. And because of that intensification of that energy, it's a time of increased karma. Now back to what I was saying about people who have it natally retrograde. For those, has anyone here ever played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or seen any gameplay of it? Do you know? Have you seen where the little drop of energy hits the Sheikah slate? Let's see. I'm getting a couple of yeses in chat. Good, good, good. Getting a couple of yeses in chat. So that phenomenon is literally like birth in astrology. In that snapshot of your birth, you were this energy was distilled into you like a drop of liquid knowledge onto the Sheikah slate. And that energy stays with you even as your chart progresses, which is a different subject. So, to that end, I believe that people who have a retrograde Saturn have a phase resonance with the transiting Saturn when it is retrograde. And what does that phase resonance end up meaning? It means that for the retrograde native, that when Saturn does go retrograde, that it can be a time to reap great rewards, like the chickens finally come home to roost. However, if the retrograde native, like the direct native, has failed to lay the necessary foundation that Saturn wants, they will experience the same arduousness that the direct native is experiencing, if not worse. So, with that portion done, I'd like to move on to some of the celebrities that I've picked out for this. So, I picked out three celebrities, but first I'm going to read chat. Phase resonance means the native experiences rewards. It means that the RX native is familiar with the RX transit Saturn. It is both the natives, natal Saturn, RX transit Saturn. Sorry, RX phase. Yeah. And then phase resonance then is the people with natal RX. When the planet RX by transit, there are benefits versus trials, given one has done the work one was meant to do. Yes, like a person who has a retrograde Saturn is more likely to experience benefits during a retrograde than the direct native is. The direct native is going to experience trials and tribulations by default, usually, but they get their reward as they survive the retrograde, which we're going to talk more about that later. So, this is one of my favorites here. Eric Pear Sullivan. Let's have a look at his chart in a moment. A few things about him. He played Dewey on Malcolm in the Middle. He retired from acting in 2010. He was 18. His first nodal return had actually completed. And he has Saturn retrograde in Aquarius in his 12th house as his chart ruler, which if you've ever watched uh, Eric Sullivan perform in literally anything, that ought to tell you what you need to know right there. But we're going to go further into it. So let's take a look at Eric's chart. And I'm gonna zoom this chart in. I'm gonna check how it looks on stream right now first, so I can see how much zooming in I'm able to see it. Any second now, it's gonna tell me exactly how it's doing. I know it's gonna be a little bit blurry for some people. Maybe if I disable my stream on Discord because of the bandwidth issues, perhaps. Maybe if I increase the size of chart. Okay, if that doesn't work, I have contingencies. Do not worry. Not work. So, and let's see what we have in terms of feedback. It looks good on YouTube, says Alfrey. So yeah, this is the part, everyone, where I encourage you to go to YouTube because I can't get it not looking blurry in the share for whatever reason. Like I'll try to display it once more, but you know how it is with technology. It is what it is. So let's take a look at Eric's chart. We first notice that they have, let's see here, also the chart on here. Yeah, I would have to change a whole bunch of settings in order to show his chart as it is on here, but I'm just gonna post. Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. Yes, yes, yes. I need to learn to ask for help more often. I be trying to do everything by myself, and it's just overwhelming. So it's really nice when people want to help me out. I need that, and I embrace that energy. So if we look at his chart, it is ruled by, it is ruled. If we look at the Saturn chart, it's ruling in its own right, but it's retrograde and it's in the 12th house. If you've ever watched Malcolm in the Middle, Dewey is a background character. Like, very rarely is he a character that just outright steals the show, but he most definitely is a character whose presence is known sometimes as an interference, but sometimes he's very clever in very subtle ways. If you look at his chart here, he has Sun in Cancer's sixth house directly conjunct his south node. So somewhere in his past life, it may very well be likely that he was a caretaker of some sort, like perhaps a nanny or an au pair or something to that effect. And in this particular lifetime, he's following the North Node route with the North Node in Capricorn, which is developing these stable structures in a mental space, in a place that's direct, that's not really seen, a place that's oblique to both the public eye and his own personal eye. And Chiron is also present, which could indicate some stomach issues, like some wounds related to digestion or things like that, since Cancer rules over the stomach. But the thing that really strikes me about his chart is that there's mutual reception between the sun and the moon. He's a Cancer sun at 21 degrees, if I'm reading this chart correctly, 21 degrees thereabouts. 20 degrees actually. I'm gonna post the full link to the chart here if you want to see the actual numbers for those of you that want to see them. And yeah, that's a sun in Cancer with a Leo moon though. So combine that with this Leo megastellium. There's four planets in Leo, and there's four planets also in the seventh house. It's like they shine. Eric shines, but he either shines for, with, or in the presence of a partner. Like by himself, he's just like kind of there, but his energy really gets activated in the presence of other people in intimate relationships. Any thoughts on the Hellenistic view that a planet is ineffective when it's a chronicle? More on that later. Consider magic. I will talk about that later. But that's a good question. I might actually ask everybody to hold their questions until the end so I don't get too lost in the weeds here. But on his 18th birthday, his nodal return, that was when he decided to leave acting. And ever since then, he's been leading a very quiet, low key life where he doesn't even appear at the Malcolm in the Middle cast reunions. He's been living a very quiet, very secluded life since then. And I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if we see sometime 10 years in the future that he returns to acting after he passes 40, especially with this Saturn retrograde. But it seems to me like he knew that there were going to be certain challenges to begin with, and he knew that these challenges were going to require him to be out of the public eye and obscured. So that's an interesting take on his chart as far as Saturn goes. Yeah, from the perspective of Saturn. Let me show you somebody else. David Bowie, an extremely controversial figure who, by the words of his former spokesperson, favored allegiance with the transgressional. Let's talk about his Saturn because his Saturn has some real stuff going on. What I mean, let me see if I can pull up David Bowie's natal chart. David Bowie chart as we'll see. And I'm gonna post that chart. I'm also gonna post that chart as a link in the YouTube. That's David. So take a look at it. Saturn in Leo. Mutual reception with the 12th house sun that is conjunct and exalted Mars. Saturn in Leo, along with Moon in Leo. So this is the part where I start talking about the other side of Saturn. So Saturn being the greater malefic makes it a sort of planet that does its best work when it draws the least amount of direct attention to itself and solely and exclusively itself. So when it's in the sign of Leo, this creates a controversial image for the native. Yeah, there's quite a bit of action going on in that seventh house with the moon right there on the cusp, also applying a conjunction to Saturn, loosely applying a conjunction to that retrograde Pluto. There's that seventh house part of fortune as well. So there was a strong compulsion within this person to be controversial for better or for worse. And wherever Saturn goes, Saturn is either seen as a threat or the amount of threat that Saturn actually is goes unseen. But when you combine the visibility and the general magnetism, the just think about Leo energy. Leo energy is not an energy that very easily goes uh ignored or unseen. So when that kind of luminescent energy is present in a planet whose whole deal is about doing bad things or uh issuing challenges to people in the name of making them think, in the name of making them grow, adapt, react, and understand what is needed for sustainability, you have a very potent concoction there, and that is reflected in David Bowie's general actions. I'm not necessarily saying the man is bad one way or the other, but I am saying that with Saturn present in Leo, that it was easy for him to draw unwanted attention to himself, especially in the house of intimate relationships, dealing with both allies and open enemies alike. Now, let's move on to Johnny Depp. Yeah. Unexpecting that one, were you? Yeah, Magic, we had to move it because it was not allowing me to live stream my channel on my stream on there, and I'm like, how is that a stage? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not no stage to me. Yeah, yeah. So hold on just a second. I really just wanna like if it'll let me, I just want to take a picture of the fact that there are 15 people spectating my presentation right now. I want to thank you all for being here, and maybe one day my presentations will draw crowds of three, four, maybe five figures of people if I'm fortunate enough to get there. But I'm very happy and appreciative of everyone who decided to show up today and who has been helping. Um, but let's continue because this is where we really make our bones here. Johnny Depp was a quintessential actor to millennials and Gen Zs alike. You know, like them Pirates of the Caribbean movies and all the other work that Johnny Depp has done. He certainly made a mark as a dive as an extremely tremendously diverse actor, one whose acting capacity, notwithstanding any sort of opinion on him as a person, but his acting capacity is just very diverse and respectable as a result of that. And for quite some time, he was considered to be a predator and a monster and all of these other things. And very clearly in the trial, it did come up that he has many of the usual struggles that celebrities do, what with the drugs and all. But it was made clear that he's not quite the monster that people think that he is. And let's take a look at his chart. Oh, is that Saturn direct that I see there? So after a nice long period of suffering immensely, Saturn went retrograde. And another thing about this chart, if you'll notice, is that Saturn is over here at 18. If someone wants to provide the link in the Discord and in the YouTube channel for Johnny Depp's chart off of AstroSeek, that'd be great. Um, yeah, but the point that I'm making here is that the chickens really came home to roost for him because right around the time that he was vindicated via the Amber Heard trial, that's right around the time that Saturn had actually gone retrograde. If I recall I don't remember exactly when his trial started, but if you were to submit a a chart of the moment for when his trial started versus when it finished, I'll bet you that somewhere in there, Saturn had gone retrograde. So his foundation was tested. And in the testing of his foundation, Saturn rewarded him with something that nearly drives me to tears when you think about it. Because this is a person who was reviled, like their reputation, their character was literally assaulted and assassinated. And they via the power of just that sheer endurance that Saturn demands of us so often, they were able to redeem themselves. Also, hello, Ann Kelsey. Welcome to the session. I recommend watching it back from the start the whole way through. But but yeah, though. Um, so the reason why I show his chart is because I want direct Saturns to know as well that um a person with direct Saturns can receive rewards during a retrograde as well, and that's evidenced here by Mr. Depp's chart. Natal Pluto in his second house seems relevant to the trial as well. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, that power struggle with the discernment over the finances or with subordinates who have been trying to damage his character, because the second house is more than just money. It's also the values that you stand on. It's the kind of gifts that you like to receive. There's many more significations in the second house. That's pretty on brand there, if you will. Y'all, I'm gonna get some water from the kitchen really quickly because talking dries me out. And I'll be back in like 5 minutes. Yeah, and that moon is in Capricorn too. Okay, having to deal with distant or phlegmatic women that can be quite troublesome. But let's see. Now his moon is at 15 Capricorn. His oh yeah, I was looking at that away. Yeah, his moon is at 15 Capricorn, but his Mercury and Venus over there are at 25 Taurus, if I recall correctly, which conjoins them with Algol. Which so you have that moon that's moving towards this Mercury and this Venus that are conjunct Algol, which is a very violent and unfortunate fixed element. Okay. So naturally, in his way of being, which is squared by his Saturn, which rules over this moon, it's like he attracts the Saturnine lesson to him like flies to honey. Like they listen to the way he speaks. They see the way that he loves. And unfortunately, despite being such a naturally wholesome individual, his Mercury and Venus. Yes, Johnny Depp is like 59, 58 now. It's been a minute and a half, But yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, so let me take it from almost the top, basically. So you have late degree Mercury and Venus. This Capricorn moon is applying a trine to them. This Capricorn moon is ruled by a Saturn in Aquarius that's in the seventh house. This Saturn that's in Aquarius is in the seventh house is also uh in a separating square with his Mercury and Venus. His Mercury and Venus are conjunct a very violent and unfortunate fixed star that, unfortunately, compounded with his moon, have made him a beacon, a target for women who don't mean him any good, but instead serve as karmic lessons for him. If you can look at the interaction between these different clusters of planets in his chart. So those are three examples that I want. Moon is house cusps. Yes, house cusps are valid. We don't do sign cusps around here, but we do indeed do house cusps. It's like right there on the edge of the fifth and the sixth, but it's more in the sixth than it is in the fifth, most definitely. So there you have it. I chose three celebrities for this case. One with Aquarius Saturn retrograde, one with Leo retrograde, and one with Aquarius direct. And so here's some quick takeaways. Saturn presents adversities and tests them as it moves, no matter which direction. Even if Saturn is continuing to go backwards and it seems like you're dealing with things that you've already dealt with before and you're quite tired of them because it's like, I've already dealt with this before. Why do I keep going backwards? You have to wait for that slingshot when it comes to Saturn. And the retrograde period is the makeup test that the teacher is giving. Like, is, hey, I'm gonna give you another chance, but if you fail this time, it's double or nothing. That is basically the gist of the experience with Saturn. So that concludes my presentation. If you would like to like and subscribe to my channels, you can look up SXR Astro. They should be linked to the name Divinati. So while the handles are still SXR Astro for a lot of my outlets, Divinati will be the display name. And this is literally all my channels: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything. If you want to chip in $4.44 on my Patreon per month, that really helps me keep on making this sort of content. I'll be adding more tiers later with more custom stuff, more content, just as I get to a more stable place within my current work. I also take PayPal and Cash App. So thank you all for watching. And now I'm going to open the floor up to the people who would like to either present their chart and let me have a look at how Saturn is going to be affecting them. Now, mind you, if you are going to present your chart for me to look at, there are some things I want you to do. The first of which is I want you to present a transit chart and I want you to present it in Placidus. I know some people don't like Placidus, but that's how I would like to do it today. And thank you all for the love and support that you have provided. It really, really helps keep me going. For one, first house Saturn versus 12th house Saturn, what would you consider the major differences? Says Chu. So Chu's a well-known person in the server who is very astute in the astrological work that they do. Um, to answer your question, Chu, so There is a tremendous amount of difference between a first house Saturn and a 12th house Saturn, and um even if we go by whole signs, that difference can be realized in the differences between whether the Saturn is below or above the ascendant line. So a person with Saturn in first house will feel a strong sense of personal duty that they'll almost wear on their sleeve when it comes to whatever experiences or whatever challenges that Saturn is making for them. It can make a person much more dutiful, responsible, and hardworking. Whereas with Saturn at an oblique angle and working indirectly, that's the difference between Saturn pushing with a very firm, very aggressive, stiff arm, pushing that person towards those Saturnine duties, as compared to a 12th house Saturn, which would make the person feel indirectly compelled to fulfilling those duties. Mary asked, do I think Saturn in Caden House is less malefic? The short answer to your question is yes. The informed answer, thank you for showing up, Kara. The informed answer to your question is because Saturn is present in a Caden house, it is less able to act directly upon the native because the thing about Caden houses, third, sixth, ninth, and 12th, is that these houses appear inconsequential to a person's daily life because the things that go on in these houses are often not visible to the eye, but they form a very important underpinning. The effects of planets in these houses is not going to be realized as quickly and directly as planets that are in angular houses, but it's the maleficence is still there. It's just applied in a different, more indirect way. That's the informed answer. Yeah. Saturn in 12, secret enemies or friends or older people. Yeah. And Saturn in 12 gives the native a natural inclination to hide certain things, and what those certain things are depend upon the disposition of Saturn, which for those of you who are a little bit newer to astrology, for me, disposition is an umbrella term that includes the essential dignity, the accidental dignity, and the aspects that the planet is making, and the house that it's in. It's an umbrella term to basically describe the whole shebang on whether a planet is weak or not. Can you tell me about Saturn retrograde natal on the 10th/9 house MC cusp and Placidus? Kat, if you would like to provide your chart in chat, I'll put you as first in the queue. I think I'm gonna read about 3 or 4 charts and then I'm gonna get out of here because I haven't slept in like 48 hours. But yeah, if you want to provide your chart in chat, I'll be happy to look at it contextually and tell you more about it. Because Saturn in 10th. So we're going to talk about Saturn in 10th and Saturn in 9th. Both. Saturn in 10th often gives the person a reputation, whether they want it or not, for causing tremendous controversy, a lot of drama, a lot of mess. Like, because Saturn's in the house of how you are seen to the world at large, it can give other people a naturally negative perception of you, or they can feel like you are more miserly, or they can feel like you're more stingy, that you're more cold, more reserved. But again, the for for the most accurate results to explain how this natal Saturn plays out, I got to look at the disposition. So, okay, we got 2 folks in queue. I'll take 2 more charts. Anybody want to put theirs up? Okay, Ferry puts in their request for Henry Cavill. So I'll take a look at that, blind firing, and then I'll take 1 more chart, and that'll be the end of it. So what I'm seeing here with your chart, Kat, is that it is also conjunct Mars, but Mars is still moving away from it because they both retrograde, but Mars move faster than Saturn regardless. So let's take a look at Venus. Venus is in mutual reception with this Saturn in Aquarius. And if I'm reading this chart correctly, see, there's a lot of things that's going on in here. First of all, your first house is intercepted with that Capricorn Cancer axis there, which can make it difficult to access structures, difficult to access good relations with women, difficult to access. You could like I don't know right off the bat, but that moon is it's far away from applying a square to Saturn, but at the same time, though, would you say that you have had some estranged relationships with your mother despite that that ruling moon in Cancer? In early life, yes, see, that's what I'm talking about with those interceptions. And this is why I use Placidus, because I get to see interceptions. I get to see things that I don't see if I'm using whole sign. And there may be astrologers out there who can see these things in whole sign, or they see them through other significations, but this is how I look at them. Yep, interceptions do work. Now, Mark, getting the high praise from Mark, you got to understand something. Mark is somebody who has been in this industry for over 40 years. This man been studying astrology longer than I've been alive. So, as a person who's been here for like 2 or 3 years, that's high praise coming from him. But yeah, back to you. Like with Mars in Libra, now, remember when you and I were talking earlier about your predilections about religion? I would go so far as to say that having Mars present in your ninth house in such proximity to your midhaven, because every planet has this little thing called moiety. You know what I'm saying? Moiety is a planet's sphere of influence. And from what I can see in your chart, your Mars is close enough to your MC to affect a sphere moiety. There you go. Swap that E and I around, Mary. You almost got it. But yeah, your Mars is close enough to your midheaven to uh influence it within that Martian sphere. But in that ninth house of, okay, Kevin, you gonna be my fourth. Got you. All right. But yeah, because your Mars is in that house of religion, that house of other people, communication, and in that house of divination, you are challenging the fairness and the equality of these religious systems, these belief systems, these higher learning and education systems. And if you are living in a society that is very Christian oriented, then naturally combined with that Saturn and Libra and that Pluto that are up there as well, and that Jupiter that's further down the road in that 10th house, that can give you a controversial perception, or that people perceive you in a very controversial way, when in reality, with that Venus in Aquarius in mutual reception with that Saturn, and for those of y'all who can't see because you're on YouTube, we're in the Discord right now. I'm gonna pull your chart up. Give me just a second, my YouTube people. I'm gonna pull this chart up real quick so that y'all can at least kind of hear and see what I'm talking about. We're gonna go to display capture for now. Wrong display. We're gonna go to display number 1. Thank you. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, buddy. But yeah, though, combined with all of these factors that I've recently mentioned, it can give you a more hostile perception or image than you intend. But I think that your intentions are genuine and based off of intelligence, logic, and reason. So that's what I have for you for now. Um, I will say to folks, not to browbeat about it, but my uh my my donation information is in the chat, and subscribing to me for a month is only $4.44, which I get some amount of. And trust me, if you want to see me keep doing stuff like this, it's all worth it. Okay, so we're gonna go to Nicola's chart. Thank you for sharing your chart with us, and I'm glad that you found the information of the reading to be good. And for those of y'all that are watching on YouTube, you can see right here in the chat, like these are sort of comments I'm getting. I don't manufacture, I don't fabricate, I don't pretend that anything is anything other than what it is. So because that's just how I like to do. Here to, I am here to preserve the honesty of astrology. That is my goal, to preserve its honesty and integrity. All right. Now I still got two more people. I got like three more charts to read here, and then I can finally go collapse. But so the next chart is Nicola's chart. So Nicola, Saturn in Gemini in the 10th house, along with the North Node in Gemini. So you have an imperative in this lifetime to learn quite a bit. And your Mercury over there is in Capricorn, and it's retrograding as well. But Mercury moves a lot faster than Saturn when retrograde. And Gemini and Capricorn are anti-Saya by sign. So as your chart progresses, once your Mercury reaches about 22, um, let me see about your Mercury actually. Yeah, Mercury was just about to station direct, was retrograding your chart because Mercury was 19 degrees away from the sun and only get about 28 away, period. So its maximum distance from your current sun would have been like 23 or 22. But the point of the matter is that it forms a very loose contra anti-psi your uh with your Saturn. And to me, that indicates like forbidden knowledge. That indicates like black hat hacking, maybe, but not really black hat hacking, but like learning things either in a way or for a sake that other people find controversial or don't necessarily agree with. Because when you have Saturn and Gemini retrograde, that gives the native an imperative to learn, to brush up on their skills. But I need that knowledge, he says. That's that's above me, my friend. You know what I mean? Like I'm just telling you what I see. Like, yeah, you need that knowledge, but needing that knowledge gives you gives you a controversial aura, especially since that Mercury is loosely contra Saya with that Saturn up there. It's like, yeah, my Saturn is ruled by this Mercury, but this Mercury is making me want to learn things that are going to damage my public reputation if, people see too much. But yeah, that's what I have for you. And also Saturn in Gemini, especially when retrograde, especially when ruled by a retrograding Mercury, can indicate learning disabilities. Doesn't necessarily have to, but can often indicate learning disability. Did you experience any sort of learning? It's interesting that you say to do it like black hat hack and typically not legal, and I'd be recommended to try and follow the law. I encourage you to follow the law as well. Let the record state, since I'm on camera and since that is what it is, period, that please do follow the law. It is very important to follow the law. But yeah, you are definitely, this chart strikes me as a person who had some learning disabilities but is trying very hard to overcome them, and by that process is gaining knowledge that others might consider taboo or forbidden. So we're gonna move on to number 3 here. We're gonna move on really quickly to Henry Cavill, born on 1983, Jersey, United Kingdom, on 5th of May. Let's see. So they have Moon directly conjunct their ascendant, which could indicate by itself a closeness to the mother. It can indicate a person with like really strong and immature emotions. I have Moon exactly trying his. Like my Moon is at 14 Libra conjunct my ascendant. So trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I would um but it's right there in an anaretic degree where it's just progressed into Scorpio, but it's slowly retrogressing back into Libra. And being that it's 8 minutes within, excuse me, within Saturn, it actually retrogressed into Libra right around their third birthday. I don't know if anything particularly happened during their third birthday, but that is when it regressed back into Libra. So it got into Scorpio in the eighth house. And Saturn in Scorpio to me is like a secret keeper. That's a Mars ruled Scorpio, which I mean with a Mars ruled Saturn, which is over there in the sign of Taurus in third, which is like a person who communicates with the purpose of either flaunting their wealth or gaining material things. I don't know anything about um Henry Cavill, by the way, so I have no prior information to substantiate what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of talking about it in the dark. Oh, it's Superman. Okay, cool. And yeah, with that Saturn in Libra in eighth house, it's like a duty to give harmonization or to integrate themselves interpersonally with other people in that eighth house. It can mean that they try to respond changes diplomatically. It can mean that the person is a little bit more easy to handle, a little bit more laid back and chill. But their moon is separating from a loose contra anti-sia. Yeah, definitely introversion there, especially since Mercury is under the beams, or not under the beams rather, but Mercury is under the horizon. There is a lot of under the horizon energy here. Like that's a lot of very personal, quiet, and intimate energy. The nice thing about them is that they have Mercury in mutual reception with Venus over there. And that can indicate a person who shows affection through their learning and could be a smooth talker at least once Mercury is better disposition, because Mercury just started its retrograde here if you look at it, because it's like 11 degrees away from the sun. Like it wasn't too far into its retrograde process when it happened. um I'm not sure what else there is to be looked at. Now see Jim, I'm not sure what else there is to be looked at about him at this time, but if you have any questions, Ferry, I can look deeper into his chart later and see if it's worth integrating into a future episode. Lastly, we're gonna look at Kevin's chart here. Andromeda. Let's see what you got. Pull it up in chat. We're gonna so what do you see about love and commitment? I don't know. I just closed his. I'll take a quick glance at it and see what I see about it. What do I see about love and uh, this is a C source riding rating, by the way. I'm not gonna take it hard or hard. Um, Venus in fourth house conjunct the North Node, and it's in mutual reception with the Mercury. That's probably very likely a very committal individual who likes sweet pillow talk, is very communicative in private, can be very attentive, very good at listening, but a little bit on the slow side. I'm not saying like they're dumb or anything like that. I mean like they prefer to process information procedurally and make sure that they understand the fact before they proceed. And with Mercury and Taurus, this is probably somebody who's a little bit more mentally predictable. Like they would be the sort of person to order the same meal every time they go to a restaurant, especially with that Mars and Taurus. Mars and Taurus people do not like to switch it up. Like the Mars and Taurus people like to get a pace, set a pace. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that's what I have for you there. I think it bodes mostly well for him. The only thing in his chart that I see that would be of particular detriment to his Venus would be its opposition to Neptune, which may blind or obscure him to the sort of people that he needs to be with. But with that done, I'm gonna move on to Kevin's chart now. So, Kevin, you have Saturn in seventh house natally, the sign of Taurus, which can indicate financial or physical or responsibilities for providing some form of love or comfort or accoutrements when it comes to partners. It can indicate a deprivation of those sorts of things from your partners, and also it's ruled by a retrograding Venus in Aries, which your Venus is very interesting and is very integral. You're quite welcome, Fairy. But yeah, your Venus is a very interesting one because it's in the house of its planetary joy, but in every other form of of way possible, not trying to like be mean or ugly about nothing, but like your Venus could not be more worsely dispositioned, including because of how it's applying a conjunction with that retrograding Chiron in the second house. But not to get too far off track, currently Saturn is retrograding and is conjunct Uranus, which I have, while I may not be a big fan of whole sign astrology, one thing I have accepted and adopted from my peers is looking at the traditional seven planet. Oh my goodness, y'all, I got ADHD. I'm over here combing myself on camera and stuff. Y'all just gonna have to deal with it. But anyway, though, it's currently retrograding across your natal Uranus that's in the fourth house. So right now, you have a direct Saturn. So you are currently being tested about your foundations in your home life or with your family. And the thing is that, so with the 10th house in Leo and that sun in sixth that is of limited visibility because of its presence in the sixth house where it's cadent and it's under the beams, you yearn to be recognized and paid attention to a whole lot more than you may be experiencing. But with Saturn present in your fourth house, Saturn is asking you right now, especially since it's in Aquarius, it's like, hey, where do I as a person fit in when it comes to dealing with personal matters, family matters, and the foundation upon which I'm built? And that may be if you're encountering difficulties related to your family life or related to your career at this time, I would strongly encourage you to look at that Saturn as a clue for why you might be having that. Because if it's one thing that I've learned as a Sun and Mercury in Leo, is that when Saturn is in opposition to my natal Leo placements, the more I try to make things about myself and the more I try to focus on me and my personal sense of self importance and vanity and things like that, the worse it gets for me. When Saturn, like Saturn right now, when it finishes its retrograde cycle and it goes direct again, it's going to be directly opposite my sun and Mercury. And I know that around those times, which actually is coincide with my 28th birthday, I'm going to have to be less self-important. I'm going to have to be focused on how do I fit into the current operation that's going on. See you, Mark. Thank you for showing up. Much appreciated. But yeah, I'm gonna have to be less self-important, and that's gonna hurt like heck, honestly. Cause like I'm a freaking Leo. What do you mean I'm supposed to not be self-important? I'm not even trying to be like arrogant or gaudy about it. It's just a byproduct of being a Leo. Like self-importance is important, but ultimately, if you're having those sorts of experiences, Saturn is the clue and the key there. If you want to alleviate the challenges, you need to be focused less on what you want and what you want the world to see, and more of like how you can help those around you and how you can build that stable, decentralized foundation in your fourth house. That's all I have for you for now. And yes, it does. Saturn does station direct in like mid to late October. Just remember there's a reason why we have post shadow periods, y'all, because it takes Saturn some time. It takes any planet some time before it can reach full speed once again once it's stationed direct. Saturn takes 5 days before it gets back up to full steam, for the record, or even before it even starts making motion in the forward direction again. So remember, things take time with Saturn. There is no easy way around it. There is no magic bullet. So with that being said, I am gonna conclude this presentation here, and I'm gonna get ready to conk out. All right, thank you all for watching. Have a good one.